It will sound impossible, but I have to tell you something. I am aware that these stories usually start with someone claiming to have uncovered government secrets, classified documents, or the real truth behind an urban legend. After reading it and getting chills, you continue living your life. However, I'm not requesting that you simply read this. I want you to realize that some stories turn into legends because the truth is too upsetting to believe. As the sole survivor of a research team that saw something that ought to have remained hidden in the Soviet archives, my name is Dr. Mikhail Petrov. This has nothing to do with the Russian sleep experiment that you have read about on the internet. This relates to the subsequent events, the part they didn't tell you. I wish I could forget that part. It began 6 months ago when I got a package at my St. Petersburg apartment. No address for return. On brown paper that appeared to be decades old, I only had my name written in Cyrillic. It contained a USB drive and one picture. 5 men in a sealed room were depicted in the picture, their faces gaunt and their eyes hollow. "You were right to run," someone had written in Russian on the back. It's not over, though. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to my former colleague, Dr. Yuri Volkov, who died in 1984. Or at least, that's what I'd been told. Let me back up. In 1947, I wasn't Dr. Petrov. I was barely 20 years old, fresh out of medical school, desperate to prove myself in post-war Soviet research. When I was recruited for a classified project studying the effects of prolonged wakefulness, I thought it was my big break. They told us we'd be advancing Soviet science, pushing the boundaries of human endurance. They told us it was about creating better soldiers. They never told us we'd be creating something that wasn't human anymore. The actual experiment, which involved 5 political prisoners, a sealed chamber, and a stimulant gas that kept them awake for 15 days, has been documented online. There is some truth to what you read online. The subjects actually scratched themselves. They pleaded with us to keep the gas running. They did say things that were illogical from a scientific standpoint. However, the subjects of the story you are familiar with either die or are put to death. That's not what happened. What happened was that on the 15th day, when we finally opened the chamber, one of the subjects was still alive. Not just alive, thriving. While the others had torn themselves apart in various states of psychosis and physical deterioration, Subject 4 sat perfectly still in the corner, his eyes fixed on the observation window. His lips were moving, but no sound came out. Dr. Volkov, the lead researcher, made a decision that would haunt both of us. He ordered Subject 4 to be taken to a secondary facility, off the books. The official report stated all subjects had perished, but Subject 4 was transferred to a sub-level laboratory beneath the Ural Mountains, where a select team would continue studying him. I was part of that team. We maintained Subject 4 in an induced state of wakefulness for 3 months. His body had changed so much that he no longer needed the stimulant gas. He didn't get any sleep. He skipped meals. He drank very little water. It was impossible to take his vital signs. 12 beats per minute is the heart rate. 94 degrees Fahrenheit is the body temperature. There was brain activity that didn't fit any pattern we had ever seen. But the worst part was what he did when we tried to communicate with him. He would tilt his head at an unnatural angle and smile. Not a human smile. Something that looked like a smile but felt wrong in every possible way. And then he would speak in a voice that seemed to come from somewhere else. Something layered and wrong. We are awake now. We have always been awake. You let us in. Dr. Volkov became obsessed. He believed Subject 4 had tapped into something, a state of consciousness that existed beyond sleep, beyond normal human awareness. He theorized that sleep wasn't just a biological necessity, but a barrier, a firewall preventing something from the other side from pushing through. Think about it, Mikhail, he told me one night in the observation room. Humans spend a third of their lives unconscious. What if that unconsciousness serves a purpose? What if we're not meant to stay awake too long because something is waiting for us in that perpetual consciousness? I thought he was losing his mind. I should have trusted that instinct. On day 73 of observation, Subject 4 stopped moving entirely. For 16 hours, he sat perfectly still, eyes open, not blinking. We monitored him through the glass, unsure if he was even alive. Then, at 3:47 a.m., he stood up and walked directly to the observation window. His face was inches from the glass, and he spoke clearly for the first time in weeks. "Thank you for keeping us awake. The door is open now. Every light in the facility went out." 30 seconds later, Subject 4 was standing exactly where he had been when the emergency generators came on. However, something had changed. His chamber's walls were marked with symbols that had never been there before, attracted to what appeared to be dried blood. They were arranged in circles that were painful for my eyes to look at up close. Dr. Volkov ordered an immediate examination. Against my objections, he entered the chamber himself, wearing full protective gear. I watched through the observation window, my hand hovering over the emergency shutdown. Subject 4 didn't attack him. He didn't even acknowledge Volkov's presence at first. He just kept staring at the symbols on the wall, his lips moving silently. When Volkov approached and asked him a direct question, Subject 4 turned around slowly. Subject 4 said, "You have been touched," in a strangely serene tone. "In your dreams, you have seen us. The ones that, despite your best efforts, you are unable to wake up. We've been getting you ready." Volkov froze. I saw his body language change. The confident researcher replaced by something that looked like terror. Because Subject 4 was right. Volkov had been complaining about nightmares for weeks. Dreams where he was trapped in the sleep study chamber, unable to open his eyes, aware of something in the darkness with him. The same nightmares I'd been having. The same nightmares everyone on the research team had been experiencing since the experiment began. "Mikhail, shut it down." Volkov's voice crackled through the intercom. "Shut everything down. Now." I initiated the emergency protocol. Sedative gas flooded the chamber. Subject 4 laughed, a sound that didn't match human vocal cords, and collapsed. Volkov stumbled out of the chamber, tearing off his mask, his face pale and covered in sweat. "We're terminating the experiment," he said, his hands shaking. "Destroy all documentation. Incinerate the subject. This research never happened." But it was already too late. That night, every member of the research team had the same dream. We were in the chamber, all of us, unable to move. Subject 4 stood in the center, his head tilted at that wrong angle, and he was smiling. He walked to each of us in turn and whispered something. When I woke up, I couldn't remember the words, but I could feel them, lodged in my mind like a splinter I couldn't extract. Over the next week, things deteriorated rapidly. Dr. Volkov stopped sleeping entirely, claiming he couldn't risk going back into that place. 2 other researchers requested immediate transfer. One was found dead in his apartment, officially ruled as suicide. The note he left said, "I can't wake up. Even with my eyes open, I can't wake up." I decided. I ran away after stealing a copy of the research files, altered who I am, vanished into the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union. I convinced myself that I had escaped for decades, that everything that had occurred in that facility had been contained, destroyed, and forgotten. The USB drive proved me wrong. When I finally worked up the courage to plug it in, I found a single video file, dated 2 weeks ago. The timestamp showed it was recorded in the same facility where we'd conducted the original experiment, a location that was supposed to have been decommissioned in 1985. The observation room was shown in the video, empty, dark. The chamber window was the focus of the camera. Nothing happened for 5 minutes. Then the glass revealed a face, not from within the room, directly in front of the camera's lens. It was Subject 4, unchanged, exactly as he'd looked in 1947. His eyes were open impossibly wide, and he was smiling. "Hello, Dr. Petrov." His voice came through clearly despite the decades-old recording equipment. "Did you think we only existed in that chamber? Did you think sleep was the only door?" The camera angle shifted, and I could see inside the chamber. There were 5 figures inside, but they weren't the original test subjects. They were the research team. Dr. Volkov, the others, all of them. Standing perfectly still, their eyes open, not blinking. They stopped running. Subject 4 continued. One by one, they came back. In their dreams first, then in their waking hours, the boundary became thinner with each passing year. They're with us now, fully awake, forever awake. He pressed his face closer to the camera. "You're the last one, Mikhail. The last one who remembers. The last one who still tries to sleep. We've been patient. We've been waiting. Every night when you close your eyes, you feel us there, don't you? Getting closer, getting clearer." The video cut to black, and I realized he was right. I haven't truly slept in months. What I thought was sleep was something else. I'm aware during those hours, aware of the darkness, aware of the presence that's been growing stronger, more defined. It's not a dream. It's a space between consciousness and unconsciousness, and something is living there. That's when I started my own research, digging through declassified documents, tracking down rumors, following the threads of similar experiments around the world. The CIA's Project MK-Ultra, the Chernobyl Research Station experiments, the Japanese Unit 731 sleep deprivation studies. All of them had incidents. All of them were suddenly terminated. All of them had researchers who disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. In their last classified documents, they all mentioned the same thing. Subjects discussing something that existed in prolonged consciousness. Something conscious. Something that waited for people to be awake long enough to allow it to pass. I found evidence that Dr. Volkov didn't die in 1984. He vanished. His last known location was a research facility in Siberia where he'd been conducting private experiments on himself. When authorities finally investigated after neighbors reported strange sounds, they found his apartment empty except for one thing: every wall covered in those same circular symbols I'd seen in Subject 4's chamber, and a note on his desk in his handwriting. I understand now. Sleep isn't rest. It's quarantine, and I've broken it. 3 weeks ago, I stopped trying to sleep altogether. I use stimulants, cold showers, constant movement, because now I know what happens when I close my eyes. I know what's waiting for me in that space, and I know that every time I drift off, even for a moment, it gets stronger. Last night, if you can call it night when you haven't slept in weeks, I saw something in my apartment, a figure standing in the corner of my vision. When I turned to look directly at it, nothing was there, but I could feel it, present, real, patient. And this morning, I found symbols drawn on my bathroom mirror, the same symbols from the chamber, but I live alone. My doors were locked. Security cameras show no one entering or leaving. I need someone to know, which is why I'm writing this. There was nothing wrong with the Russian sleep experiment. The door should never have been opened, and it doesn't let go once you've seen it and know what's on the other side. The researchers didn't die or disappear. They're still awake, somewhere, in some state that isn't quite life and isn't quite death, perpetually conscious in a space where something else also exists. I found one last document on that USB drive. A research note from Dr. Volkov, dated 1983, the year before his official death. It said, "Final observation. The human mind requires sleep not for physical restoration, but to close the door we cannot see. In ancient times, they understood this. Sleep was sacred. Dreams were guarded. They knew that staying awake too long wasn't just unhealthy, it was dangerous. Not because of biology, but because prolonged consciousness thins the barrier between our reality and somewhere else. Somewhere that is aware of us. Somewhere that has been patient. The subjects didn't go insane from sleep deprivation. They woke up to something that was always there, just on the other side of our closed eyes. And now it has seen us. All of us. Everyone who was involved. Everyone who knows. We cannot unsee what we have seen. We cannot close the door we opened. I am going to the source. To the original facility. Perhaps if I can understand what we really invited in, I can find a way to... The note ended there. Incomplete. But I know where he went. I know what he was trying to do, because I'm about to do the same thing. Tomorrow I'm returning to the facility, the one beneath the Ural Mountains, the one that officially doesn't exist anymore, because I found something else on that USB drive, building schematics, updated ones, from this year. Someone has been maintaining that facility. Someone has been continuing the research, and I need to know if Dr. Volkov is still there, still awake, still trying to close the door, or if he's become something else entirely. I know this sounds like madness. I know you're reading this and thinking I've lost my grip on reality after decades of guilt and paranoia. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is all the delusion of an old man who never recovered from witnessing something traumatic in his youth. But ask yourself this. Have you ever had a dream where you were absolutely certain you were awake? Where everything felt more real than reality itself? Where you were aware of something in the darkness with you, something that knew you were there? And have you ever wondered if maybe you weren't dreaming at all? The human brain is designed to sleep, to shut down for 8 hours, to become unconscious. We accept this as normal. But what if it's not about rest? What if it's about protection? What if every night when we close our eyes and drift away, we're actually hiding from something? Something that's been there all along, just waiting for us to stay awake long enough to notice it. I can feel it right now as I write this. The presence. Closer than it's ever been. It knows I'm coming back. It knows I'm going to return to where it all began. And I think that's what it's been waiting for all along. For one of us to come back willingly. Maybe that's the real experiment. Not what sleep deprivation does to the human body, but what happens when you stay awake long enough to understand that consciousness isn't a gift. It's a vulnerability. If you're reading this, it means I uploaded it before I left. If I don't return, if you never hear from me again, please understand something. Don't look for me. Don't investigate further. Don't try to verify any of this. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some knowledge is meant to stay hidden. But I can't live like this anymore. Half awake, half aware, existing in a space between true consciousness and whatever sleep has become for me. I need to know the truth. I need to understand what we really did in 1947 when we decided to keep 5 men awake for longer than humans were meant to stay conscious. I need to know if Subject 4 was right, if we really did open something, and if there's any way to close it. My hands are shaking as I type this, not from fear exactly, from anticipation, because part of me, a part I don't want to acknowledge, is curious. That same curiosity that made me join the experiment in the first place. The drive to understand, to discover, to push beyond the boundaries of what's known. Maybe that's what it wants. Maybe that's how it spreads. Not through force, but through curiosity. Through the inherently human desire to stay awake, to see more, to experience everything consciousness has to offer. I've been awake for 72 hours now, the longest stretch yet, and I'm starting to see things clearly for the first time in decades. The apartment looks different. The shadows have depth they shouldn't have. The walls feel thin, and I can hear something. Not with my ears, but somewhere deeper. A sound like breathing. Like something massive, just on the other side of a barrier I can't quite perceive. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time. I understand now why the subjects begged us to keep the gas on, why they fought against sedation, why they preferred to tear themselves apart rather than go to sleep. Because once you've felt what exists in prolonged consciousness, once you've touched that state of perpetual awareness, normal waking life feels like a shadow, like you're only experiencing half of reality. And sleep? Sleep becomes unbearable. Because you know now that when you close your eyes, you're not resting. You're hiding. You're a child pulling the blanket over their head, pretending the monster isn't there. But I'm not a child anymore. I'm going to face it. I'm leaving this account as a record, as a warning, as an explanation for what might be found if anyone goes looking. The USB drive, the photographs, the research documents. I'm leaving them all here in my apartment. Address is in the metadata of this file. If I don't come back, maybe someone can make sense of what we started, or maybe they'll be smart enough to destroy it all and forget this ever existed. There's one last thing I need to tell you. Something I realized as I was reviewing the original experiment footage for the 100th time. In the background of one of the recordings, you can see a clock on the wall of the observation room. It shows 3:47 a.m. The exact time Subject 4 approached the window and said the door was open. I have been keeping an eye on things. I've been waking up at precisely 3:47 a.m. every night for the past month, even when I'm taking a sleeping pill, even when I'm worn out. My eyes open and I can see my room clearly for a few seconds before I'm completely conscious. Additionally, there is always something in the corner. Something slender and tall that vanishes as soon as I'm fully conscious. Except last night, it didn't disappear. It smiled. With the same wrong smile I saw on Subject 4's face 77 years ago. I'm leaving in an hour. The drive to the Ural facility will take 2 days. I don't know what I'll find there. I don't know if I'll find Dr. Volkov, or just another empty room filled with symbols I can't understand. But I know I can't keep running. I can't keep existing in this half-state waiting for something to happen. So I'm going to walk through the door we opened, and I'm going to find out what's been waiting on the other side. If you're reading this and you've made it this far, I want you to do something for me. Tonight, when you go to bed, pay attention to the moment right before you fall asleep. That brief instant when you're still aware, but consciousness is slipping away. Notice what you feel in that moment. Notice if there's a sense of something else, something aware. Because I think it's always been there. I think we've all felt it. We just tell ourselves it's our imagination. We just close our eyes and let sleep take us because the alternative, staying awake and acknowledging what's really there, is too terrifying to consider. But we can't hide forever. The door is already open. It has been since 1947. We just haven't been awake long enough to notice. I hope I'm mistaken. I hope this is all the hallucinations of an elderly man who was traumatized and never fully recovered from seeing something horrifying. When I get to that facility, I hope to see nothing but my own paranoia and empty rooms, but I don't think I will. I think I'm going to find Dr. Volkov, and I think he's going to be awake, still awake, after all these years, and I think he's going to be smiling. This is Dr. Mikhail Petrov signing off. If anyone finds this, please understand that we didn't mean for this to happen. We were scientists. We were curious. We thought we were exploring human biology. We didn't know we were knocking on a door. And we definitely didn't know something would answer.